Hello folks! Well, traveling ever westward, out of Texas, we find ourselves in a new land. One that, one may say, is rather enchanting. I mean, look at the new trees and plant life we're encountering for the first time. This is truly the land of enchantment, as they say. And I say that because, well, we are now in state number 32 for the coverage project. This is, as the nickname suggests, the Land of Enchantment, New Mexico. I mean, look at this place. It looks like a nice little pasture, so peaceful, like a little Eden in the Southwest. And it's surprising that now we have entered the Southwest for the first time. It's a separate region, but it's surprising because you wouldn't expect the Southwest to look like this. Yeah, for our first encounter with the state of New Mexico, for our debut, it's not the desert landscape you and I are all used to. We are high up in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, an important chain of mountains, part of the greater Rocky Mountains, and up here it's like 7,000 feet above sea level, and maybe that's why temperatures aren't so bad. It's a nice little 75 degrees compared to those sweltering hot days of the last few weeks. This is actually pretty nice. I can tolerate it. To me, New Mexico stands as one of those interesting magical states of the US. New Mexico is known for a lot of things, as we'll get to, I guess, but at the same time, relative to all its other surrounding states, Texas, Arizona, Colorado, it's not that highly visited. It's almost like that hidden gem of the Southwest. It might be the hidden gem of the West, who knows? But what all comes to mind when you think of New Mexico, when you hear about this enchanted land? Well, you might think of, well, in the name New Mexico, it's gotta be similar culturally to Mexico, and you're probably right on that. New Mexico is as Mexican as you can get in the United States. The Southwest as a whole has a huge Hispanic community dating back to before the US was even a country. But New Mexico takes it a step even further because Spanish is an official language alongside English in this state. You might think of New Mexico's incredibly rich history from the days of the American Indians here in the Southwest, such as the Apache, the Comanche, the Navajo, various tribes like that, to the days of the colonial Spanish and later Mexican influence the state had upon it, and then of course the frontier Wild West American history it has. Lots and lots to talk about with New Mexico history. You might also think of the strange and quirky UFO alien scene going on. You know, Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of crazy stuff happened in the last century or so regarding aliens and extraterrestrial activity here in New Mexico. Finally, do you think of Breaking Bad, that hit show that took place right in the center of this state? That's right. New Mexico has a lot to offer. It's also a huge state in the US. When compared to all those eastern states, New Mexico is ginormous. It's also very sparsely populated, so you can drive long stretches on the highway and not have an exit for 10, 20, 30 miles at a time. It's amazing. I was gonna say that it's just a bunch of wastelands as you're driving, but look at this. These are some of the wastelands you might encounter. Things that look so heavenly. So I did not choose this exact location for our first adventure in New Mexico by accident. You see, this point, with all the beautiful scenery around us, is both relaxing, and the things and sights we'll be seeing and doing are going to capture a great representation of what New Mexico's culture is all about. So, I guess we can start with this. What might be below this little circle area? Seems like we gotta enter with care, but yeah, let's see what's down below. Well, it seems like we've descended down into an ancient dwelling. probably a reconstruction. But this is going to be only our first of many stops on our adventure today through Pecos National Historic Park. Dwellings like these housed the native people of this very important mountain pass here in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, the Pecos people. They were lucky enough to inhabit these places because this, geographically speaking, was a very, very significant place. It was the crossroads between the Great Plains and the Southwest. All right, back into the daylight we go. Far off to the east, we have those Great Plains. But to the west, we have the Rio Grande Valley. And the Rio Grande Valley is important because the Rio Grande River, which starts in the highlands of the Rocky Mountains, drains all the way to the Gulf of Mexico and creates the border between the US and Mexico today, historically has played such significance to the indigenous peoples of the Southwest. So around the approximate midpoint of these two great regions of the US, the indigenous Pecos people were able to capitalize on their geographic position and establish a trading network. They were the epicenter of it all, and they were able to make their home here. Today, we call this home the Pecos Pueblo. I'm sure the Pecos people had a different name in their own native language, but today in time, we call this area the Pecos Pueblo. This is the heart of this National Historic Park. And so the peak of their society was around 1450. That's when they were able to be at the height of their civilization, being that trading center. But of course, their time came to an end due to the arrival of unexpected visitors, the Spanish conquistadors. The Spanish were looking for various things. The secular folk were looking for riches and gold. They were trying to find those cities of gold, and once they conquered the Pecos people, they used this area as a hub to look for those cities. They didn't find those cities, but they tried. Others, the Franciscan priesthood, decided to convert forcibly these indigenous people, and that caused a lot of backlash. Eventually there was a revolt in 1680, more than a century after first contact in 1541. Hold on, I'll continue the story soon, but I think I'm missing something important here. We are walking through what was the giant Pecos Pueblo, one of the largest in the Southwest. The whole Southwest region is full of those pueblos, of both ruins of yesteryear and even today. There are designations, pueblos, for the modern indigenous groups. But this used to be a huge area with towering adobe buildings, and this used to be a giant tower. So yeah, come to Pecos National Historic Park because you can see what remains intact of this very historic and sacred area. Because go figure, the Ancestral Sites Trail, the path upon which we're walking right now, is full of those ancestral sites here in the park. Wow, this is authentic history we're looking at. These are the remains of the 1717 church. The Pecos people successfully revolted against the Spanish. This used to be the site of a larger church, the sign of the Spanish power here. They destroyed that, but the Spanish came back. They built another church, which doesn't look so good right now. It was back in the day. So at this point, the Pecos people weren't doing so hot. And then the Comanches came in. They knew for centuries how powerful the Pecos people have been. So they took their opportunity and they got power around here. New Mexico had always been a backwater of the Spanish and later Mexican states, so it was not that difficult for the Americans to annex it, take it over, and by the time the Americans came to this mountain pass, the Pecos Pueblo had largely been neglected, the people had dispersed. It just seemed empty. Such a mystery of what occurred here. However, just a few miles west of us in that general direction, probably down the mountain from the lofty peak we are on right now, sat the historic city of Santa Fe, and boy did the Americans love that city. It was the heart and center of the trade and commerce that happened throughout the mid-1800s, along a trail you might know as the Santa Fe Trail, which ran from the middle of the country down to Santa Fe, right close to where we are. And I'll give you a hint, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, a little bit soon from now. The Americans didn't really have much of an idea of what was going on around here until in 1915, excavation efforts realized that there were a lot of remains, not just of the structures, but of human remains here. The archeological efforts here did not stop 100 years ago. They are still ongoing. This park is carefully maintained and preserved for the future, not just for visitors like us here on the Coverage Project, but also for the descendants of the people which used to call this place home. Yeah, it turns out that the indigenous Pecos people are not extinct. They sort of assimilated into other neighboring similar indigenous groups. And so you might find these descendants in nearby pueblos, as they're called here in New Mexico, for various people groups who also encountered similar fates to the Pecos people. It's pretty windy and stormy here in New Mexico. Not something I'd expect for our first day here, but whatever, we'll roll with it. New Mexico is a state that, like many other states, is defined by its several different regions. We are in the north central part of New Mexico starting out. This region's defined by the mountains you see around us, the high, lofty elevations. These mountains are one of the southernmost points of the great chain of mountains known as the Rocky Mountains, and it is here that you will find the legacy of the Pecos people. It's not all green here in north central New Mexico. There's a lot of deserts here, as you might have seen in that first little minute. It's a varied landscape, varied climate, and the different regions of New Mexico have their own quirks. New Mexico is a state that tries its best to combine the past with the present, and it's here in Pecos National Historic Park that gives us that glimpse into the beautiful past and present culture, that triculture of indigenous, Hispanic, and Anglo-American, all in one. It's very interesting. So before I get rained on real hard, let me just say this. Coming to you from Pecos National Historic Park with a great day, a great scenery around us. More travels to come. I will see you at the next location.